Welcome to SI Now. I'm Robin Lundberg here with Madeline Burke. Today we're talking Kobe's Oscar, Shaq Griffin at the Combine, and more. But before we dive in, just have to mention that SI recently launched a premium content network, SI TV. You can find documentaries, movies like the entire Rocky series, original shows, and more. Check it out on Amazon channels. But Madeline, it was a big Oscars night for fish creatures and sports. Shape of Water won Best Picture. However, Icarus, which helped expose the Russian doping scandal, took Best Documentary, while Kobe Bryant can now add Academy Award winner to his resume.
Yeah, Kobe won for Best Animated Short Film with Dear Basketball. He added an Oscar to his collection of trophies and accolades. Now, while some people were stoked for Mamba, others were not so supportive. We saw some tweets out there on both sides of the fence here from the Peanut Gallery. But does this award enhance Kobe's legacy?
Of course not. I mean, it's cool that Kobe Bryant has won an Oscar, but it doesn't change what he accomplished as a basketball player, right? I mean, an all-time great player, top 10 or so, I would say. However, this also doesn't elevate the discourse in a different way. This is a movie about a basketball player saying how much he liked basketball. And the one thing it makes me think is, it's not that hard to win an Oscar. If this can get it done, how did he get one before Shaq? You know, Shaq's been in a lot. Kazam was robbed.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think Kazam is Oscar worthy. I think this absolutely affects his legacy, because we look back at athletes and we don't necessarily look just what happens between the painted lines. We look at their entire career, how they use their platform to affect positive change, how they use their platform in other ways, how they have excelled in other areas. Kobe is the first professional athlete to win an Oscar, the first professional champion to win an Oscar, to win multiple NBA titles, to win NBA MVP, and to succeed at such an elite level on the court, and then to succeed at an elite level in something off of the court, to win an Academy Award. I don't know, do you know just anybody who's won Academy Awards? Just like, oh yeah, that's easy to do. I don't think it's easy to do. There's hundreds of people. Kobe Bryant, Leonardo DiCaprio have won the same amount of Academy Awards. It's a pretty big deal.
Dear sports talk shows. We just mentioned Shaq with Kobe. Well, another Shaq is in the news as Shaquem Griffin dominated the NFL Combine over the weekend, making him our adrenaline performer presented by Toyota. Let's go places. Griffin, who was initially not invited to the Combine, first drew raves by putting up 20 reps on the bench press while wearing a prosthetic on his left arm. Griffin, of course, lost his hand due to a birth defect at age 4. He then wowed observers by running a 4.3840, the fastest time for a linebacker in 15 years. And judging by the reaction of his peers on Twitter, they are convinced about his pro potential. The question is, are you?
Absolutely. I'm absolutely convinced. I think he could do it. He's been playing at an elite level in the college game. He was invited to the Combine, and people were doubting him. People were waiting to see where he would fall short, and he just exceeded and dominated, exceeded expectations. And I think a lot of the argument, too, against him was people are making comparisons about, okay, he's got one hand. You look at players like Jason Pierre-Paul, when he had that incident with his hand in the fireworks, he had to wear that club for a while, and his game suffered because of it, because he lost use of a hand and he could not play the same level of the game. The difference with Shaquem Griffin is he has been playing with one hand the entire time he has been playing the game of football. So it's not adjusting to playing with one hand. This is how he plays. This is how the man plays the game. This is how he has gotten to play at an elite level in college. This is how he has gotten to be invited to the NFL Scouting Combine. And this is how he has continued to wow people. And this is not becoming a disability for him. This is just a difference for him.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about Shaquem Griffin, first of all, like everyone else, I would hope I'm rooting for him to succeed. I do think it's fair to bring up this as a hindrance as a professional football player. It's just the reality of the situation. Not having a hand, having what he has to deal with there could affect your ability.
If he's a lineman, I could see it, because you got to grab a little bit more. But as a linebacker, you know, you got to wrap up. He is not one who misses tackles.
I'm not disparaging what he's done. In fact, getting to my larger point, I would say he is someone who has defied the odds at every level. He's proven people wrong at every level. So when you get this Combine performance after he was not invited, at worst, he deserves a chance to prove people wrong again. So I think an NFL team should absolutely give him a shot. They should absolutely draft him. I was just saying, for context of the conversation, it is something that is part of the equation when you're talking about a football player.
Yeah, I am looking forward very much to seeing where he ends up in the league and seeing him just continue to break through and wow us all. Another guy who wowed us, Lamar Jackson, was a headliner at the Combine. The Louisville quarterback chose not to run the 40, now perhaps not to encourage those who suggest he should switch to wide receiver. Did he make the right decision in doing that?
Yeah, I think absolutely he made the right decision because he stopped that talk right there. He said, I'm not a wide receiver or any other position. I'm a quarterback. That's what I've played. That's what I've excelled at. And he's explosive enough athletically where it's nice that can be a fallback option later on. But the ceiling is nowhere near as high for him at those positions as it is at quarterback. We've seen some of these guys converting, and it doesn't turn out the same way. And none of those guys was as good as Lamar Jackson was in college. His electrifying ability with the ball in his hands, he can throw a real long deep ball. So I like the fact that he's not going to compromise at this point. He's going to try and make it at the next level as a quarterback. And I think some of the points he brought up were valid. Josh Allen, for instance, you know, the criticisms of those two guys are the same. I've heard people say Allen has the build, but they don't know if he could hit the broadside of a barn. The question with Jackson is the accuracy. So why is one guy being elevated while another guy is being brought down when one guy has shown a lot more on the field, that being Jackson?
That's true. And the quarterback position, though, has to be the toughest position to translate from the college game to the NFL game, hands down. I mean, we've seen how many dozens of Heisman-winning quarterbacks fall flat and flop in the league. And, you know, you talk about changing positions, too. Guys like Tim Tebow were asked to change positions to consider going to tight end, and he did not, and that his career as a NFL quarterback was not very long-lived. You know, there's a potential for that conversation to be had, but I do have a lot of respect for the fact that Lamar Jackson says, you know what, this is the position I play, this is the position I play well, this is the position I've chose to play, and I'm entering into the NFL pool at that position. I mean, he was asked about it several times. He's going through this process without an agent. He's got a lawyer, he's got his mom as his manager. He's just going through this process saying, I am who I am. I'm not being coached up by an agent. I'm not being moved this way by anything. And he's just being authentically himself, playing his best game. I think he helped his stock. I think he helped his stock by not running the 40 because he doesn't want to feed those people who say, oh, look, here's another reason you'd be a good wide receiver.
And if a team is going to tell you they want you to switch positions, you don't want to be drafted by that team if you're Jackson because it shows you they don't believe in you at what you are choosing to do. Again, if it doesn't work out at quarterback, fine. Then you consider it. But why would you consider it now when all you've done is play quarterback and really there's nothing on his resume that says he should be doing anything else but taking snaps from behind center? Jackson is a quarterback, but a current NFL star has said his value is that of a running back and wide receiver. According to an NFL Network report, the Steelers are not expected to give Le'Veon Bell what he wants, as they plan to franchise tag him for the second time in 2 seasons. While this would pay him over $14 million in 2018, it would fall far short of the guaranteed money he is seeking. How ugly should we expect the showdown between Bell and the Steelers to get?
I don't know. I feel like this is, I mean, the franchise tag situation goes, I mean, look at the Kirk Cousins situation. Look at how that affected the relationship with Washington and now how that has affected his career and his trajectory as well. I mean, Le'Veon Bell has not shown any reason that he should not deserve to get paid. He does deserve to get paid. He does deserve, and the franchise tag is something that, you know, yes, you get your money, but you're putting your body on the line every week. You're putting your game on the line every week for a 1-year deal. I don't know. I think this could get heated. The
only leverage NFL players really have is their ability. We probably saw no one exercise that better than Darrelle Revis in his prime. I know the way his career ended wasn't exactly great, but it certainly worked out for him.
Darrelle Revis, another guy who had contract issues, though, as well.
At that point, that's what I'm saying. That's his leverage, is his ability. He is perhaps, or I think definitely the best all-around running back in the NFL for his ability to run the ball and catch the ball as he's asking for. So he's saying, yeah, $14 million is a lot, but I should be getting these huge guarantees that you see guys at quarterback and other positions getting. And until somebody moves one way or the other, I think you at least see it go through the beginning of the season.
Yeah, this guy has proven he has the ability, he has the talent. He deserves a contract with incentives, with motivation, not a franchise tag. For more analysis on some of the biggest stories from the NFL Combine, we welcome in the MMQB's Connor Orr. Connor, quarterback was perhaps one of the most highly anticipated groups to watch in the Combine this year. Did Josh Allen separate himself as the top quarterback in the class?
I think the combine was certainly set up for him to do so. He always had the arm talent, right? So he's going to work out a lot better than some of the other guys, Lamar Jackson, Josh Rosen. I think Argeni Brentas wrote he hit somebody on like a 66-yard frozen rope there right in front of scouts. So that's going to definitely do something to boost your stock. Now, when you put him on the field with, different receivers, if you get him on the whiteboard, will that sort of hurt his stock? I'm not sure. But the combine was always built for Allen to dominate.
There was a lot of talk about Lamar Jackson going in. Then he made a statement by not running and just throwing. How did he throw?
I think as expected. I mean, I don't think that scouts were expecting him to really light up the board. And you got to also consider that he's not throwing with his wide receivers. These are guys that maybe are cutting off routes short or cutting off routes early. And so you have to take the good with the bad here. I think what scouts did like, his mechanics, his motion, his arm power, that's the stuff that's going to translate to the next level. And that's why I think he's still going to be either a first or second round pick.
Now, Sam Darnold did not throw, while some of the quarterbacks who did perhaps didn't quite help their stock with the exhibition. Which quarterback hurt himself the most?
I think all of them a little bit. I was talking to one GM who does need a quarterback, and like you said, I mean, this is the reality of the situation right now. I think anybody that you're looking at has some mechanical flaws or has some personality flaws or has something that you're not going to like. It wasn't as easy as last year's class to fall in love with, and that's hard to believe where we're sitting at now. This year's class was always built as kind of the one that you need to get a quarterback from.
I heard going into the draft a ton, Saquon Barkley is the best overall prospect. Then he goes in and he dominates the combine, but he's still not necessarily talked about at the very top of the draft. What more does Saquon need to do to go number one?
I think he did it. I think there's a very real chance that he's drafted first overall. He's going to be the first running back taken number one since Kajana Carter in 1996, also out of Penn State. I just think he's the purest prospect on the board. He can do everything. The success of Ezekiel Elliott and Leonard Fournette means GMs aren't shying away from these guys anymore. And you just saw everything. I think second fastest 40 time, and he weighed 35 pounds more than the guy who beat him by a couple, milliseconds. And so I think he did everything he needed to, and I think that I would definitely expect to see him at number one, or if not number two, coming out late April.
Now, Shaquem Griffin also wowed this past week. He had 20 reps on the bench press, posting the fastest 40 for a linebacker in over a decade. With one hand, where will Griffin be drafted?
I think it's a good question. I think what scouts are still worried about is not being able to put him in a specific position. Now, this will be good for teams, I mentioned the Packers, maybe the Lions, who play a lot of matchup defense and can sub guys on and off. I mean, he's good as that kind of tweener defender. I think in the MMQB this morning, I projected somewhere between the 4th and the 6th round. I think is still a good fit for him. But, man, I mean, John Schneider from the Seattle Seahawks said he had talked to one NFL executive this week who placed Griffin just below John Wooden as one of the most inspirational people he's ever met.
All right, why don't you give us your top 3 risers from the combine? Make it one quarterback, one running back, one defensive player.
Well, I mean, I'll cheat on the running back a little bit and just say Barkley, but here's why. I mean, I don't think that anybody going into the combine, like you said before, thought there was a realistic chance that the Browns would take a running back at number one. But I think that there's and I think it's better than 50% now. I really think that everyone's getting comfortable with this decision. He's wowed people in interviews, and I think that that's really was the biggest step for him, to get out in front of these people and to put them at ease with drafting him number one overall. If you talk about a quarterback, I'm definitely going to say Baker Mayfield, just because, like Allen, this combine was built for him, right? I mean, he's accurate. He's got great arm strength. And what it's going to come down to, I think, is the interview process. And there were scouts that got to finally get in front of him and see what the personality was like. And now I think that there are people who might not fall in love with him, but there are going to be people who are reaffirmed kind of in their love for Baker Mayfield. I think he's an acquired taste, and people just needed to see that in front of them. And in terms of a defensive player, I'll go with Bradley Chubb. And the interesting thing about him, comped to Joey Bosa heading into this combine, and then he goes out and beats him by almost 0.2 seconds in the 40-yard dash. This guy's a monster athletically, and I've heard maybe as high as number 2 to the Giants. So I think this will be a really interesting couple months coming up here for Bradley Chubb.
What about whose stock took the biggest hit in Indianapolis?
I think there was probably some people that were upset that Sam Darnold didn't throw. I think that you saw guys like Baker Mayfield positioning themselves, I don't care if my receivers aren't out there. I want to throw because I want to compete. And so will some people wonder about Darnold, right? And there really weren't a ton of advantages to him throwing, but I do think that people are going to at least kind of openly question this over the next few weeks. Does he have that competitiveness? Does he have that fire? Or does he want to be back at USC where everything is kind of set up for him to succeed and improve his draft stock? Again, I would have done the same thing if I were Darnold. I don't think there's an advantage to throwing with the combine, but I do think that some scouts might question it.
Connor Orr of the MMQB, thank you as always for the insight.
Thank you.
The NBA season continues to intrigue, so to keep tabs, we'll be giving you our weekly top 5 in the power rankings. For me, I've got the Rockets at number 1, just so I have an excuse to have Golden State at number 2, at least for the time being, given the Rockets' regular season success. Warriors at 2, Raptors at 3, and then 4 and 5, the Celtics and the Cavs. For the Celtics, Madeline, something that stands out to me in late game situations, they can't always rely on Brad Stevens to draw something out, and they're limited with their creators. Really only Kyrie Irving is the guy they can trust to go get a bucket. Perhaps Tatum can grow into that role, Brown as well, but right now it's just Irving. They struggle offensively. For the Cavaliers, I'm very interested to see how they do with Tristan Thompson out and Larry Nance sliding into that center spot. I think ultimately that's the lineup they're going to want to use because they've struggled a little bit after that first post-trade deadline boom.
Robin, I think we're pretty much in agreement except for our number 5 spot. I went with the counterintuitive pick here. I've got the Sixers sliding in at the 5 spot after the Rockets, Warriors, Raptors, and Celtics. I think Philadelphia has been playing very well of late. They're 8-3 in the month of February. They've been 30-19 with Joel Embiid in the game. They've got, he's playing well. He and Ben Simmons are playing well together. They've got a lot of great continuity, and they're also making moves to show that this team is focused on winning and focused on building towards winning. The additions of Ersan Ilyasova and Marco Bellinelli are going to really be an impact on the stretch. They could play 500 basketball and make it into the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to play above 500 basketball. These two guys are going to really help a bench that's been inconsistent so far this season. And it also just shows it's a statement to the league. Hey, we are here to win. We are here to make moves, and we are making moves in a positive direction. I'm trusting the process, and I'm really enjoying watching this team play at very least.
I think you're accelerating the process a little bit. I enjoy watching them play as well. Their starting 5 has been great. I think I undersold Embiid a little bit. I always knew he was great. He's dominant out on the floor. But I don't think the Sixers are ready for that action yet.
I don't know. Don't sleep on the Sixers. The Philadelphia is here to make some noise right now.
All right, well, we'll keep tabs on that. But it is March, which means the NCAA tournament is right around the corner. Of course, this year, the controversy around paying college athletes has seemed to hit a fever pitch. Our Amy Campbell talked with one of the biggest advocates for paying players, former Wisconsin forward Zach Bohannon.
Joined now by former Wisconsin forward Zach Bohannon. Zach, you've become one of the biggest advocates for paying college players, but you didn't always feel that way. How did your perspective change during your time in school?
Yeah, it definitely changed over the course of my 5 years. I came in as a mid-major basketball recruit. I went to the Air Force Academy and started my career technically in the military. And so I saw the side of not only being a student and an athlete, but also as a cadet in the military. And long story short, I played basketball there for 2 years. And at the time, it was one of the top conferences in the entire country. And I ended up transferring to Wisconsin. And I was the typical, I would say, in the majority viewpoint of on the NCAA that I didn't think athletes should be paid. And as my time started at Wisconsin, I kind of saw the dichotomy of the two different size of programs that are kind of shaping the college landscape in the Power 5 conferences and everyone else. And I saw that there is it is a multi-billion-dollar industry, especially as you get up to the top, and it makes sense for the college athletes to be paid in short.
What kind of things did you see at Wisconsin that bothered you the most or felt the most unjust to you?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I saw that was the biggest thing was just how it was no longer a sport for fun or for playing for the passion of the game. It was more so a job that they tracked all the way down to how many hours you worked per se in your respective sport. And I saw the college football dynamic of a stadium being filled every weekend with 90,000 plus fans. And saw just the big money that was thrown at it. And the biggest thing that changed my viewpoint was I was an economics major at the Air Force, and then carried that over at Wisconsin and graduated in 3 years. And I had an elective that I took, Communications 262 at Wisconsin, and they said that you can argue. It was a debate class, and you could argue whatever topic you wanted. And I actually took the topic of that college athletes shouldn't be paid, and I did the typical arguments that everyone throws out there. And the more and more I started learning about it, and especially learning about it from an economics perspective, the less and less that it made sense on why athletes shouldn't be paid.
So currently college basketball is facing this massive scandal where many programs and coaches are being accused of paying the recruits. The perception is, and has been for years, that everybody's doing this. Is that true? Is everybody really doing this? How bad is this?
I mean, whenever you have a colluding cartel like you have right now with the NCAA, which is an institution, as in the National Collegiate Athletic Association, put together a system where you're literally colluding with your member institutions to not provide fair market value to the unpaid labor that's currently inside the system, which is the athletes, you're going to have a black market develop, and you're going to have a situation where you're seeing right now play out as the FBI got involved, and they're seeing that you're throwing all this money at the coaches and the assistant coaches, and there's all this money being made by the apparel companies and the schools themselves that, of course, are going to see players that are in these FBI indictments get $15,000 or $20,000, whatever the amounts are in the indictments, because it's a steal by these schools to get a player like this. Recently, Arizona had a player said that they were on tape paying him $100,000. That's an absolute steal compared to what the value that player is bringing to the institution. So it's no surprise whatsoever that the NCAA is colluding and suppressing and creating this black market that is creating these under-the-table payments.
Did you see some specific things to that nature during your time in school?
I mean, you hear it all the time, especially being at a big school, especially being at a Power 5 conference school, that there's players and schools, even in your own conference, that aren't doing it necessarily by the book or by the NCAA rule book. I'm not going to get into specifics, but that was definitely something that you heard of. And we lost out on recruits because we were one of the few schools that did it the right way, that ended up not being able to pay their players and ended up losing recruits that way.
I was hoping you were going to get into some specifics. All right, we'll shift gears a little. We'll talk about your friendship with your former teammate at Wisconsin, Nigel Hayes, who you connected with a class action lawsuit against the NCAA to let college athletes be paid. It's scheduled to go to trial next year. How specifically is the suit hoping to accomplish this?
Yeah, it's just the typical tactics by the NCAA that the NCAA kind of tries to prolong the lawsuits as long as possible, just because they know that the players who are on the lawsuits are under a 4 to 5 year time frame and window, that once they're done, their marketability of those players ends up not being much after they graduate and move on to the NBA or NFL or whatnot. So one of the things that we looked at was trying to get as young of a player as possible, and that's why I got Nigel Hayes involved in the Martin Jenkins, which is led by Jeffrey Kessler, who is a civil rights attorney who helped bring free agency to the NFL. And hopefully it's going to end up becoming for the better, that the NCAA is going to win out on this case, or I guess Jeffrey Kessler is going to win out on this case and kind of provide a free market opportunity for all college athletes. But as I've mentioned, when you're going up against a multi-billion-dollar enterprise that brings in billions of dollars every single year, it's hard to outlast the resources that they have going for them.
All right, let's move on to something a little bit more fun. Your brother Jordan plays at Iowa. You've never missed a single one of his games, and you have a full-time job. How on earth are you doing this?
Now, it started out as a crazy promise that I told Jordan that it was one of those things I wanted to just be there for him, because I know what the system does to star players and star athletes, especially when things aren't going well. So last season, after the first away game I went to, I told him to mark me down for every ticket here on out. And 34 games later, after his freshman year, I had made it. And so I said, and he kind of didn't give me due respect for doing it for those 34 games. So I said, okay, if you're not giving me respect for the first 34 games in your freshman season, then how about we do it for the rest of your career? And now the second season has concluded. I'm 67 games in a row. So it's been a pretty special moment to be there for him through thick and thin. But it's one of those things that they're priceless memories that you can't take away. And I know that there was only 2 years left, so no matter the lack of sleep or lack of energy I may have or may not have for my day job, is only going to hopefully pay off in the long run once his career's over and I can say I fulfilled the promise.
That's pretty fantastic. Zach, it was great talking to you. Thanks so much for all your insight. We appreciate it.
No, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk sports.
Zach Bohannon with some great points. I mean, talking about how much money is made in the college game. I mean, how many seats are filled at the games and how much, I mean, look at how much money these coaches are making. Millions of dollars for these coaches. There's got to be some money for the players that are putting in the hours and putting in the practice time and putting in, I mean, you got to at least give them a minimum wage role for these practice hours they're doing. They are making these universities so much money.
Absolutely. I mean, it's fairly obvious, and I feel like a broken record at times talking about how the system is broken. I do kind of feel that this is sort of analogous to some of the controversies the NFL deals with, totally different kinds, but where we spend so much time and energy discussing them, and then when the big events come, they sort of go to the back burner, and I believe that will happen in this case once the NCAA tournament starts,
Right.
But you would hope that a scandal this large is the impetus for some overhaul within the way this is all structured.
Well, and when you look at Title IX, too, it makes some confusing aspects of how do you pay football and basketball, and then what about women's softball and soccer, and where do you draw the line with the income and the paying out? And it is confusing, but the one thing that is certain is they need to resolve this because it's not working out right now.
Well, it's a multi-billion-dollar
Yeah.
industry, not something about amateur athletics at its core.
Exactly.
Let's keep it real when it comes to that. That'll do it for our show today. Tomorrow, we're back at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. In the meantime, you can check out the latest videos and updates at SI Now Live on Twitter. And make sure you subscribe to SI TV on Amazon channels for exclusive documentaries, your favorite sports movies, and more.